This plant once helped entire communities survive. It grew in poor soil, required almost no care, and produced more nutrition than most modern crops. But today, almost no one grows it. So what happened? There is a plant, a simple, unassuming plant. For centuries, it was a quiet savior. It held the line between survival and starvation for countless communities. When the rains failed and the great crops withered, this small grain held on. It asked for so little, just a patch of sun, a bit of earth. It gave back so much. It filled bowls, fed families through the leanest of years. It was a promise, held in a tiny seed. A promise that even in the hardest of times, life could find a way to endure. It was a constant, a reliable friend in an unpredictable world. Other crops, bigger and bolder, took its place in the fields. The knowledge of how to grow it, how to harvest it, how to turn its small grains into a life-sustaining meal began to fade. The songs that were once sung at its harvest fell silent. The stories told about its resilience were no longer passed from one generation to the next. It slipped from the fields, from the markets, and from memory. The cultivation of this plant was deeply woven into the fabric of daily life. It was not grown in vast, isolated monocultures. Instead, it was part of a complex and intelligent system of mixed cropping. A farmer might plant rows of this grain, alongside taller stalks of maize and sprawling bean vines. This was not a random arrangement. It was a carefully orchestrated partnership. The different plants complemented one another. The beans would fix nitrogen in the soil, enriching it for the other crops. The taller maize might provide a bit of shade during the hottest part of the day. This diversity created a healthier, more resilient field that was less vulnerable to disease or pests. The labor involved was often a communal affair, strengthening social bonds. The planting was done by hand, with people moving together across the fields, their movements synchronized by work songs passed down through generations. As agriculture modernized, farming shifted toward uniform crops, designed for large-scale production and transport. The small, diverse field gave way to the vast, uniform plain. They worked best on flat, open terrain, planting a single, standardized crop over thousands of acres. In this new world, the quiet, humble grain was at a distinct disadvantage. Furthermore, its yield per acre, while reliable, was often less than that of the new, scientifically bred, high-yield varieties of rice and wheat. Long supply chains favored crops that were uniform and easy to transport. The ancient grain, with its many different local varieties and names, was confusing to this globalized system. Government policies and agricultural programs began to favor the big commodity crops. Farmers were encouraged and often incentivized to leave their traditional seeds behind and adopt the new modern ones. The younger generation, seeing where the money and prestige lay, turned their attention to the crops of the industrial age. The resilient little plant was left in the shadow of progress. Why would a people turn away from something that had served them so faithfully for so long? What could possibly replace such a steadfast ally? It is a subtle story, one of shifting values and changing priorities. As the world sped up, this humble plant was seen as too slow, too small, too modest for the grand ambitions of a new age of agriculture. It did not fit the neat, uniform rows demanded by modern machinery. It was a plant of patience, of small efforts and steady returns in a world that had begun to crave speed and massive scale above all else. So it waited. The seeds, some of them, were kept in old clay pots and dusty drawers. The plant itself did not vanish. It simply retreated to the margins, a wild whisper of a time gone by. But was it truly outdated, or simply overlooked in the rush for efficiency? The time has come to name this remarkable plant. It is not one plant, but a family of them, a diverse group of small-seeded grasses known collectively as millet. For nearly 10,000 years, varieties like pearl millet, foxtail millet, proso millet, were staple foods for civilizations across Africa and Asia. They were the grains that fueled empires and sustained villages through droughts and famines. The rediscovery is happening on a small human scale. It is happening in community gardens, where people are learning to cultivate these grains for the first time. It is happening on small family farms, where growers are reintroducing millet into their crop rotations, finding that it helps to restore health to tired soil. We see it in the careful hands of seed savers, who are searching for rare, local varieties and multiplying them to share with others. This revival is also finding its way into our kitchens. A new generation of chefs and home cooks is exploring the versatility of millet. They are discovering its light, nutty flavor and its wonderful ability to be used in everything from fluffy breakfast porridges, hearty salads, to gluten-free breads and crispy, savory cakes. Millet is no longer seen as just famine food. It is being celebrated for its unique taste, its nutritional benefits, and its connection to a more sustainable way of eating. What is the secret to this plant's remarkable endurance? It is a master of water conservation. Its root systems are efficient, able to seek out and absorb moisture from soil that appears bone dry to the naked eye. While modern high-yield grains demand vast quantities of irrigation to survive, this plant sips rather than gulps. It can pause its growth during a dry spell and then resume when the rains return. Beyond its thirstlessness, the plant possesses a remarkable natural resistance to pests. Its tough leaves and hardy stalks are unappealing to many common insects. This innate resilience meant that farmers did not need to rely on expensive or harmful sprays to protect their harvest. And then there is the nutritional power packed within its tiny seeds. This grain is a powerhouse of essential nutrients. It is rich in protein, fiber, and vital minerals, like iron and magnesium. A simple porridge. Protect a child from the devastating effects of malnutrition. This combination of traits, drought tolerance, pest resistance, and high nutritional value, made it a near-perfect crop for challenging environments. It was not designed in a laboratory. It was perfected by nature and selected by generations of observant farmers. It represents a different philosophy of agriculture, one based on working with the environment rather than trying to dominate it. It simply found its place within the existing landscape, a quiet and efficient survivor that asked for little and gave back a great deal in return. They could be stored for months, even years, without spoiling. A bulwark against hunger. This was progress. Vast monocultures, efficient to harvest, were extremely susceptible to disease and pests, requiring an ever-increasing arsenal of chemical treatments. These crops were incredibly thirsty, placing immense strain on freshwater resources. Heavy use of synthetic fertilizers began to degrade the soil, stripping organic matter and microbial life. The promise of endless abundance came at a hidden, growing cost. Quiet conversations among ecologists, dissenting agronomists, then a broader debate. In pursuit of yield, had we sacrificed resilience? Had we built a powerful yet brittle food system? But what if those conditions changed? The old resilient plant looked less like a relic and more like a missed opportunity. Slowly, a new perspective emerged. Value measured not by peak performance, but by ability to perform under challenge. True food security not from uniformity, but from diversity. Had we discarded a tool of immense value? A tool perfectly adapted for the challenges we now face. Today, some growers are rediscovering its value, especially in regions facing poor soil and water shortages. Millet checks all of these boxes. It is not a magic bullet that will solve all our problems, but it is a powerful, time-tested tool that we would be foolish to ignore any longer. Sometimes the strongest solutions aren't the newest. They're the ones we left behind. The plants that sustained our ancestors through the great challenges of the past still possess the strength to help us navigate the challenges of tomorrow. We simply need the wisdom to see them, the humility to learn from them, and the will to plant them once more. The old answers are there. We just need to listen.